In today's episode, I am chatting with Chantelle. Chantelle takes us through initially not wanting to have children because she was career oriented, to then changing her mind and experiencing difficulty conceiving. In 2021, Chantelle experienced a miscarriage. And in her words, this started the horror story where she was the victim of obstetric violence, and among other things, she experienced unconsented multiple vaginal examinations, as well as her wishes not being respected. Chantelle then went on to fall pregnant using assisted reproductive services, and she fell pregnant with her baby girl. She had originally planned to have a home birth, but unfortunately, due to complications, she was unable to. And this led her back to re-entering the hospital system and having to birth at the hospital where she had been the victim of obstetric violence. This episode is very raw, and Chantelle is very honest about her experience, and she takes us through how this experience has affected her mentally, and how this will impact on her potential second birth if she decides to have another child. When we recorded this episode, I felt personally touched by Chantelle's story because of how raw her story is and the birth trauma that she has experienced both during her miscarriage and the birth of her baby girl. Listening back to this episode, I consider myself to be opinionated because one of the main topics that we discussed throughout this episode is the non-respect of Chantelle's consent. And as an allied health professional and a doula, I am deeply passionate about empowering women and having their consent and wishes respected. Where you hear a bell sound, it is because I have censored the name of the hospital to Chantelle's request so that she can tell her story the way she wants. You are listening to Cuppa with a Doula. I'm your host, Alicia, exercise physiologist and doula. And every week I chat with a mum or mum-to-be about all things pregnancy, birth and parenting. The stories you will hear in this podcast are real and sometimes raw, but they are all told without any taboo. So grab yourself a cuppa, relax, put your earphones in and enjoy this episode. Hi Chantelle, thank you so much for being here today.
Hey, thank you. It's good to be here.
We have your little one with us today, and hopefully she goes to bed, but other than that, It's no issue at all. So Chantelle, do you want to start by introducing yourself? So telling the listeners your name, where you're living, and who is in your family.
Yeah, okay, so Chantelle. I am up in central Queensland. We live just south of a little town called Emerald. My fiance Mitch and I, and now we have our little itty bitty Lottie, who's 6 weeks and 1 day.
Oh, wow.
So we're out here on a property, and we've got all the animals and all the, horses, dogs, cats, chickens, everything. Living the rural dream.
That's amazing for Lottie. She'll just grow up with lots of animals. She'll just be used to, that interaction. That'll be great for her.
Yeah, I bought her a pony the other day. I shouldn't have. She's a bit small, but she has her own pony now, so she's definitely part of our family.
Well, you mean an actual pony, not a fluffy toy, right?
No, I mean an actual living pony, yes.
That's amazing. I love the present. That is so good.
Yeah. I can't help myself. I should stay off the computer.
Look, she'll love you for that. And if you put a little horn on top of its forehead, it'll look like a unicorn. It'll be the best present ever.
Yeah, she has to have a love of horses to fit in with the family. She'll get dragged around all the horse
Oh,
events, so might as well start her very young.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And starting with something that's, good for a size and height, a pony makes sense. Yeah, good.
Yeah, yeah, perfect.
Amazing. Um, so I guess let's start at the beginning. So what was, actually, let's start even before your conception. Did you always want to be a mom?
That's really funny. I never wanted to be a mum. Um, I was always a very corporate career person. And then in
Mhm.
2015, I threw away my executive career and came back onto the agricultural side of things. Um, and then,
Wow.
yeah, I just, as everyone says, you meet Mick Dreamy and life changes and suddenly you want children, which was really confronting for me to get my head around. But actually, I did want to be a mum after 30 years of very passionately denying that I was going to be the world's best auntie forever. Um, and then, yeah, we decided that it was something that we wanted to do. And I think in hindsight, if I knew the trouble we were going to have, I wouldn't have so passionately denied ever being a mother. I think I might have cursed myself if that's ever possible. It's funny to look back on it now, but yeah, it's not something that was ever on the cards. And then when we changed our mind, it was really confronting for us to not have that option. Um, so yeah, it certainly teaches you a thing or two, that's for sure. So I guess from the beginning, we were on property. So out on a big rural property in a regional town when we had our first loss, and that sort of came as a bit of a surprise, and I guess we just got on with life after that. And then 2021, in March, we discovered that we were pregnant, and we were really happy, really, really happy. And just in the bubble of, that crazy bubble where you get so excited and you buy all the things. I was buying all these cute little daddy's little mate and all this, all the gorgeous stuff. And then we got to May, and
Mhm.
I experienced some cramping. I was still working the horses and, doing all the things that you normally do. I was adamant that I shouldn't change my routine. Um, and yeah, I
Mhm.
had some cramping, and then Mitch got home really late from work, and I said, "Oh, look, I've got some spotting. I think we should call the doctor." And so we did that. We have one local doctor in the town that we were living in. So we saw them the
Mhm.
next day, um, and they sent us off to the neighbouring town, which was 3 hours away, for an ultrasound.
Oh,
And that
wow.
confirmed that we had lost our baby at 9 weeks.
Oh.
Um,
Oh.
and so we came back to the hometown, um, saw the doctor again, and she just said, "You've got to go up to the hospital. I've made an appointment for you." So we went to the local hospital, um, and we were 6 hours from a major centre, and we have really good private health insurance and um, all that sort of stuff. So we got to the local hospital, and it was just like that, just bam, bam, bam. This is what we need to
Mm.
do. You'll have surgery tomorrow. These are your options.
Oh.
You have no options. He just said, he railroaded us down a certain pathway, and that was that we would go in, be admitted, have the I can't remember the name of the tablet, and then have surgery. And we
Oh,
were really
wow.
conflicted about that. We didn't want to do that, but we were told,
Mhm.
no, this is your option because it's a miscarriage. We can't leave the product in your body, otherwise you're going to get really sick and
Oh,
you'll probably die. Um, so, we went home
wow.
and just sat inside that for the evening. And then the next morning we went to the hospital, got admitted, and the horror for us basically started there. I'd had, I think, 4 vaginal examinations by the time we had surgery. None of those were consented to. We were just railroaded into it. We've got to do this. We've got to find out. We've got to see what's going on. And it was all with a male doctor who had requested, no, we want a female. No, we don't have any females here. I'm the doctor in charge. And so Mitch went away to grab something to eat because they weren't going to do the surgery until later, I think 2 or 3 hours later. And when he was away, I just had the most intense pain. And in hindsight now, that was because I was delivering our baby. And that pain was the baby passing through my cervix. And he just got back as the doctors came in, and I said, look, I feel like I need to push. And it was all a bit of a blur, but essentially I delivered our baby. And there was a female doctor who walked in the room, and they realised that I had delivered the baby, and she grabbed the placenta, and she had it in her hands, and she said, oh, what do I do with it? And he said to her, just take it to the lab. And she left the room with our child in her hands. And then he said, look, I've got to do another internal. I need to see if there's any product still left in there so that, and at that point I just started screaming, and Mitch just said, get your hands off her, just go to surgery. So and there was still product retained, so we had to have surgery anyway after all of that. I went into surgery obviously hysterical, which meant I came out of surgery in shock, and I was shaking, and I chipped one of my teeth. And Mitch had to say to them, get her a bite block, get her a blanket, what are we doing here? And he basically did all my aftercares from surgery, because they just left me, in shock and whatever. And then that male doctor came back in after surgery, and there was no discussion. And they said, oh, we need to see how much blood loss you've had, and just grabbed at my clothes. And then I said to Mitch, you have to get me out of here. So we basically just got up and left. And then that was it. We never heard anything from anyone beyond that. I refused to go to any doctor's appointments after that. I spent a few days at home and I was okay, but we just started to reflect on everything that had happened, and the trauma of that just got louder and louder for us. So then I think it was probably 6 weeks later, I was riding the horse, and I had this horrific pain on my right-hand side. Like a period pain, but it was going right up under my ribs, and I thought it was my appendix. So we went back to the doctor and said, look, appendicitis, whatever. Rushed off to the hospital. I said, I have to have a female doctor. And so the female doctor, who was a student doctor, was attending to me, talking about the appendicitis, and the male doctor walked in, who had previously dealt with us, and he took over. And he said, how are you going after your surgery? And I think this is just period pain. You just need to go home. And I said, look, I don't want to bother you. You need to get out of here. If you're not going to get me a female doctor, I'm going to leave. So we left the hospital. And then fast forward to October. So I have endometriosis. I've had that for 17 odd years. I had surgery with my most amazing specialist up in Toowoomba. I've had a relationship with him for a really long time for my illness, and we trust him a lot. So we had surgery, and it turns out the pain is because my appendix was adhered to my ovary. So it was pretty rough. It was a 6-hour surgery. We discovered that I had blocked fallopian tubes. The appendix stuck to the ovary. My bowel was adhered to my left ovary, and my fallopian tube was adhered to my ovary as well. So Dr. Chettle cleaned all that up for us, and we spoke to him about the trauma that we'd been through, because obviously going in for a gynecological surgery was very stressful for me. And he was so beautiful. He let Mitch come right into the room for admission, and when they transferred me from one bed to the other, the nurses were trying to move my gown, and it really panicked me, and I started crying, and he came over and he said, no, look, leave her alone, she can do it. And he was just so beautiful, and he really helped us to get through that. And we decided there and then that if we were going to have a baby again, it would be him that delivered the baby. So, yeah, we had surgery. I recovered from that, well, sort of. I got back to life a bit too soon, so I had some scar tissue issues, and yeah, I should have stopped and healed, but I didn't. And then, yeah, fast forward to March or February 22. So after October, we had been trying again, tracking ovulation, doing everything we could do to get pregnant, and nothing was happening. And so we engaged a fertility specialist in February 22, and tested my AMH and discovered that I had a critically low AMH. And I would definitely recommend, if anybody is looking at fertility, check your AMH before you do anything. Start there. So yeah, we did all our testing, discovered the AMH issue. We engaged a specialist down in Mackay through Queensland Fertility Group, and we had a meeting with her, and instantly we were really comfortable. We touched on the trauma that we'd been through, and she was amazing. And basically the timing worked out perfectly. We started the protocol straight away, the drug protocol. And then in March, we went in for our procedure. Yeah, the timing was amazing. It was all meant to happen. And yeah, so we had our procedure in March and got pregnant straight away. So it was 8 days post procedure, and I was like, I can't wait, I have to pee on a stick. And I did that, and there was a really faint line. And then 10 days, there's a darker line. 12 days, a really dark line. And yeah, by the time we went in for the HCG test, it was like in the thousands. I think it was 3,000 and something. So
amazing.
we thought we were having twins.
Did you do that would have been a bit of a surprise, I'm sure. Did you do IVF?
So we did an IUI first. She wanted to try IUI, and then if that didn't work, do IVF. Yeah.
So the IUI is where you're stimulated, and then they inject the sperm right when you're ovulating. Is that right? Perfect.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's got a lower chance of success compared to IVF. Is that right? That's what I've heard.
That's correct. I think I might have just been really lucky enough to get a break, because the universe knew that I'd had enough and I couldn't cope. Didn't need any more procedures.
Yeah, and I'm sure the fact that with endometriosis, and the fact that you had the surgery performed by a trained surgeon who actually knew how to deal with endometriosis and probably remove all those adhesions and make sure that therefore your fertility was at its peak, probably really helped as well. And because you had that in, did you say October, and then it was in March that you conceived, so 6 months later.
Yeah, and he flushed out the fallopian tubes. He really set us up properly so that we would have success.
Yeah. Amazing. Wow. So good. Yeah. And so with endometriosis, because you've had it for 17 years, were you ever told, oh, you might have trouble to conceive naturally, or maybe at the time, I guess having children wasn't on the cards anyway?
Yeah, it wasn't on the cards, but there was never a discussion about that. and there was never a diagnosis until about 5 years ago. So
right.
it was something that was completely in the dark, and it was just normal to experience all the things I was experiencing. I guess the positive takeaway from that is I have a really high pain threshold, so it's given me that gift.
Wow, you're so lucky.
Yeah, hit the lottery.
God. So I know that endometriosis it's not a new disease, but it's a disease that's now being recognized a lot more by doctors and surgeons, and there's a lot more surgeons being trained to actually properly remove the endometriosis. What were your symptoms 17 years ago when it was all kept in the dark?
So it started with just crippling period pain, and I would be doubled over. So I would have probably a window of about 5 days where I felt good, and the rest were just, pre and post. It was just horrific pain all the time. IBS to accompany that. And then that makes sense because of all the adhesions on my bowel and the fact that my bowel was twisted and all that sort of mess that was in there. It all makes sense to me now. Just the really irritated stomach and the excessive pain all of the time.
The reason why I'm asking is for anyone who's listening right now and is experiencing atrociously painful period pain and thinks, oh well, that's what it is to be a woman. You get really painful period pain. Well, no, actually, it's not. It's not meant to be debilitating to the point that you are in the fetal position and you just can't move, can't do anything, can't participate in your daily activities. You have to leave work, you can't study. It's not meant to be that debilitating. And if it is, then seek help. Go and see your GP, go and see your gynecologist, and do tell them that you believe you might have endometriosis, because some doctors may not have been trained back when they trained about that, and they may actually not know what endometriosis is. So sometimes if you kind of put the word out there, they can go, oh, okay, well, I'll refer you to someone who knows more than me because my training is limited. That's why I was asking about your symptoms.
Yeah, definitely. And I was always excessively bloated and would look like I was pregnant. So definitely, I would just say go straight to a gynecologist. The only way they can diagnose this disease is with surgery. So don't muck around, get your referral, go and see a gynecologist and request surgery. And then if it's not endometriosis, that's perfect. You can rule that out. And if it is, you can start to manage that.
Exactly, yeah. So how was it managed for you? Did you, because outside of surgery, there's no real treatment, is there? I mean, they can put you on the pill, but that's not treatment. Being pregnant is not a treatment. What could help you to manage your endometriosis?
Yeah, I had a series of different contraceptive options, a mini pill, and just get on with it. There was nothing really that worked, and I didn't want to take the pill or any of those sort of things, so I just maintained my sort of really active lifestyle. And from 2015 onwards, I was out on cattle properties, so you just get on with stuff. You get too busy and life happens and you battle on.
Yeah, that's right. Wow. It is, I mean, it's really lucky that you had that endometriosis operated on. It got all removed, all the adhesions, and then you got pregnant. So how did you feel in your first trimester? I'm sure you would still have some form of fertility treatment during your first trimester.
Yeah, so I had the lovely progesterone for 16 weeks of my pregnancy. That was fantastic. Anyone who's going down that route knows exactly what I'm talking about. Horrible progesterone every day, 2 tablets in the morning, 2 tablets in the evening.
Oh God.
And I had HG, so I felt terrible.
Oh. Oh. So HG, hyperemesis
I had,
gravidarium, which.
yes, yeah. I had just, I think for the first, it must have been 9 or 10 weeks, I did a pregnancy test every week. I just couldn't get that out of my head. I had to keep doing it. I was convinced that we were going to lose the baby. Right from the beginning, I got really precious. I stopped riding my horses straight away. Stopped carrying the groceries. Stopped. I'm so lucky that Mitch is so amazing. He just picked up all the slack because I definitely ran around in a bubble of cotton wool. And every time I went to the bathroom, you wipe and check. And I had a lot of stress and anxiety about that. But the pregnancy was so strong, and she was perfect. So we were very lucky in that respect. But definitely stressful and so sick. I couldn't even stand him brushing his teeth. When he would brush his teeth, it would make me vomit.
Oh no, that's terrible. Oh, and I think coming back to you saying, oh, you felt you were being precious. I think it's about protecting yourself and doing. It's really devastating to have a miscarriage, and even though it's probably not your fault, the miscarriage probably would have happened no matter what you did, and it was probably something to do with genetic. Maybe this embryo wasn't viable. You know, if it helps you to stop riding the horses, stop picking up groceries, and if mentally it actually helps you to go, look, I'm doing something to try and prevent miscarriages, even though you can't, then you got to do what you got to do. And it's really hard. A pregnancy after a miscarriage is really stressful. And if it helps you to make you feel a little bit better and you go, yes, I'm doing everything I can, then, that's fantastic. That's all you can do.
Yeah, and it was just one of those things. I had to process how I was processing. It just, there couldn't be any other way for me. I had to do it my way. And we didn't tell anybody that we were pregnant. We weren't in a position where we could deal with anyone else's emotion or feeling about it. So it took a long time before we told family, and we only told my mum and his immediate family. And right from the beginning, we said, nobody speaks of this. We don't want it anywhere. Neither of us have social media. We did not want anyone to know that we were pregnant. We just could not cope with any noise from outside. So it was right from the beginning. It was a very intimate pregnancy, and we kept it that way right until some people still don't even know she's been born. So.
And I guess, in that sense, it's only the people that actually really matter in your life that know, and that's how it is, that's probably a good way to go about it.
Yeah. So we battled on. I had my first hospital appointment here, and right from the get-go, it was awful for us. I have very set ideas of what I wanted from the beginning, and so I went into that first appointment and I was like, oh, fantastic, I'm going to have a water birth, nobody's going to touch me, everything's going to be beautiful. And the obstetrician said, no, that's not how it works. We'll likely induce at 38 weeks because we don't want your placenta to degrade, because this is a assisted reproduction, so you're a high-risk pregnancy. So we'll talk about a water birth, but that probably won't happen. And, we need to induce you at 38 weeks, so let's prepare for that now. And that was my first appointment. I was 20 weeks pregnant when I first went to the hospital here. So I left that appointment and I came home and I was so wound up. And I couldn't believe that I would have to be induced and that I couldn't have a water birth and I couldn't do the things I wanted to do. And she had said to me that if they didn't induce me, there would be complications and the baby would have to be flown to Rockhampton or Brisbane, and I couldn't go in the plane because there wouldn't be enough room in the plane. And that was my first meeting with them. My brain. So right from the get-go, we were pretty hostile towards the medical system. I was very
understandable.
With the HG, and I started getting really bad headaches at about 16 weeks. And I had been asking them if I could get into the MGP because I wanted one midwife and to build a relationship and at least try and have that security of one person. And I finally got my MGP appointment and was told by the MGP midwife that I needed to do my glucose test, my GTT. And by that stage, I'd started doing a little bit of research and, you know, reading Dr. Sarah Wickham and listening to podcasts and things like that. And I said, no, look, I don't want to do a GTT, just do a normal blood test. No, you've got to have this test. I said, well, I can't because I live too far out of town. I will get a migraine if I don't eat, and I can't do that. I know my body. I don't want it. Oh, well, if you don't do it, your baby's going to come out hypoglycemic and its brain's going to be fried. Do you want that? And I was like, really? Is this what we're doing? And I just said to her, no, I don't. I don't want that. I'll talk to someone else. And I left. And I got onto Facebook, onto lots of different groups with lots of different people from all walks of life. And a lot of the ladies were suggesting that I just do a standard blood test, and they can check where you're at. So I got a standard blood test, completely fine. I don't have gestational diabetes. There's no need to worry. So again, the anxiety, the stress from the hospital, and the fact that they were trying to railroad me down this path that I didn't need to be on because I don't have gestational diabetes. And it was just a simple blood test that told me that.
Yeah.
And then from there, I came home and...
Yeah, sorry, I was going to say, what's really striking is the bedside manners of some doctors, and I'm not saying all doctors are the same, but the ones you seem to have met, they just want things to go their way. There is no discussing potential options, and because you were high risk, just because you conceived with IUI, it's straight away you're just put in this category where you're going to be compliant, you're going to do the things they want, they're going to induce you, and they didn't seem to really care whether that would lead to potentially a cascade of intervention. They just wanted to control risks that may not even have been risks in the first place. And I think it's really good that you did your research and you actually stood for yourself and you said, no, this is not what I want. And if you're not going to listen to me, I'm going to walk away, because some women in your position may not have been able to do it because, you know, I guess as a society, we're led to think that doctors know better, which we now know that doctors, they've done extensive training, but it's your body and you actually know better than them. So, and also you don't have to do anything that doesn't feel right, that you don't agree with, or that, you know, you just don't want to do it, and you don't have to justify yourself. So I guess walking away from this situation is probably the best thing you could have done for yourself, really.
Yeah, and it just, every time I had to go to the hospital, I got so stressed out, and it got to the point where I said, I can't go by myself, because every time I go by myself, this happens. I need you with me to be a witness so that we can gang up together and push back. And so from about 26 weeks, he came to every appointment with me. And then towards the latter end of the pregnancy, that was twice a week. But yeah, so I came home from that appointment and we went for a walk, and I just said, I can't do this. I feel like I'm getting prenatal depression because I'm so miserable every time I go to the hospital. I'm so wound up about it. We need to find an alternative. And that took me down the path of finding a private midwife. So we reached out to a midwife who's based in Bundaberg, and she agreed that she would travel for us to have a home birth. And so we got all the information from her, and then we sat with that decision and looked at the pros and the cons. And then I'll never forget it. It was 7 o'clock at night, and we were sitting on the lounge together, and we made the decision, we're going to have a home birth with Michelle. And it was just instantly like somebody had taken the concrete pillar off my shoulders, and we felt so good. And so then I got really excited. I went online, I bought my birth pool, I bought my fairy lights, I got just, everything was so prepared. And then we had, 4 or 5 weeks of just pure bliss dealing with this private midwife. We travelled down to Rockhampton to meet with her. On that appointment, I had really bad swelling in my feet. And we said, oh no, look, we went shopping yesterday. We went nuts at the shopping mall and shopped all day. So it's probably just that. And she took my blood pressure and she was like, ooh, it's a bit high. Is this white coat syndrome? You're a bit excited. We've had a lot of built up feelings to meeting, so perhaps that's what it is. I'll take it again in 10 minutes. She took it again and she was like, still a bit high. And I just said to her, look, don't worry about it. We'll do it next time. I'm sure it'll be fine. So we left. We had planned to meet with her at 32 weeks and then again at 36 weeks to lock in the birth plan. I had been working really hard on my birth plan, and between the three of us, Mitch, Michelle, the midwife, and I, we had this beautiful birth plan at home. And that looked like, okay, Michelle, you're going to come over, sit on the couch, drink a cup of tea, and I'm going to have the baby in the pool, and Mitch is going to help me. And she was like, yeah, that's cool. That works for me, whatever. And that was what we wanted. I wanted nobody but him. And yes, it was all going beautifully. And then I think about a week later, I started to feel really sick, really tired, huge headaches, dizzy. I had some spots in my eyes and things like that. So I had to ring the hospital here. I spoke to Michelle and she said, no, look, I need you to call the hospital and just go in and get some bloods and everything done. And that's when the cascade of rubbish started. I got diagnosed with, with PIH, so pregnancy-induced hypertension. And then my twice-a-week visits to the hospital started. I was told that I couldn't have a home birth. We had a big discussion with Michelle and established that it probably was going to be too risky to have a home birth. Just for the fact that we're 40 minutes away from the hospital. She was comfortable, but she said, it's just a bit too far away from the hospital. Can you find somewhere closer to have a home birth, closer to the hospital? And we weren't able to do that. So I entered the hospital system again. And then, twice a week, sometimes 3 or 4 times a week, I had to go and have bloods and urine and the pre-eclampsia protocol. At 34 weeks, they diagnosed me with pre-eclampsia. So we had.
So what's a pre-eclampsia protocol?
So you go and you do blood pressure, urine, and blood tests. And if you've got protein in your urine, then so they do a PET screen, pre-eclampsia toxemia screen. And if you have protein in your urine, then they'll do a protein creatine ratio. And if you have over a certain level, then they would normally admit you and give you magnesium. My PCR ratios danced up and down, really, really close to a level where I'd have to be admitted, and then they would go normal, and then they would go up again, and so we just danced around that the whole time. Then they started to discover other things. My B12 was really low, my iron was really low. Everything just toppled from there, basically. I had growth scans upon their recommendations. We didn't want to do that, but we had growth scans at 32 weeks that discovered that she wasn't growing. And then 34 weeks, she'd gone down to the 17th centile, and they diagnosed me with intrauterine growth restriction. A lot of that, I missed out the part where, because of the blood pressure, they'd put me on a medication. I really didn't want to go on medications because of the risk of the transfer through the placenta. They weren't able to give me any statistics about this medication that they wanted to put me on. So they put me on labetalol as the first instance to try and control the blood pressure. And we were saying to them, all right, so there's a risk that it causes growth restriction in the baby. What are the statistics? Oh, we're not sure, sorry. We don't have any information on that, sorry. If it wasn't safe, we wouldn't prescribe it to you. And like for us, if it was 1 in 1,000, then we were comfortable with it. But if 1 in 10 babies got growth restriction because of this tablet, we didn't want to take it. 1 in 100, we didn't want to take it.
Makes sense.
But nobody could tell me anything. I looked everywhere, Cochrane medical journals, everywhere. I couldn't find any statistics on this particular drug. And I got to the point where I was so sick that I had no option but to take the drug. So I started on that, and then, sure enough, the growth scan started declining. Whether that was related to the medication or not, I will never know. But by 32 weeks, she was down to the 17th centile. 34 weeks, she was at the 17th centile. So they ordered another scan at 35 weeks, and they started to put a plan in place to transfer us. And what that looked like was a phone call was made to the specialist down in Brisbane. And in their words, they decide what happens. So we basically had nothing to do with it. The MFM in Brisbane and made a plan that we would have to go and deliver in either Brisbane or Rockhampton because they had the NICU unit. And that's what it looked like. So we started having teleconferences with Rockhampton Hospital because it's closer for us. And
of course.
We had another growth scan. And the next growth scan that we had, she had actually grown a little bit. So cut-off point was 2.5 kilos. So if your baby's 2.5 kilos and above, you can birth in Rockhampton. Sorry. So we just made the cut-off and argued to still birth in because after my discussions with Rocky, I really wasn't comfortable. Mitch wasn't able to stay with me after she was born, and they weren't able to guarantee me a female doctor. So we just said, no, we can't do it. It's too stressful. And I said to them, if you can't guarantee me a female doctor, then I want a cesarean, because at least I'm a little bit in control of that. And she said to me, well, you won't have all female staff in a cesarean, and your legs will be in the air like this anyway. So we just,
that's not a way to talk. It's the language that
the midwife. It was hideous. The midwife that was with us was so gobsmacked. I had to tell her to close her mouth because she was just sitting there staring at this camera like. And so we were infuriated by that discussion, and we said no. If we have to transfer, it can be in the emergency plane, because we're not going down here to hand over my body to these people with that attitude. And lucky for us, the growth scan said that she'd increased a little bit, so decided that we could stay there. And by that point, we had met a midwife who was a travelling midwife who was doing a stint here, and she is a hypnobirthing coach. She has a lot of experience, and she was really on the same page as us. And we had big discussions with her about our previous trauma. And the turning point for me was when she referred to our loss as our baby. And we were talking about everything that had happened down in that other hospital and how they took away the products, as they called it. And she said, no, that's your baby, that's your child. And that resonated with me, and I went, okay, this is my type of person. She respects me, she understands me, I'm comfortable with her. So Karen took over our care. She became our primary midwife, and we updated our birth plan to deliver with her. I really wanted my water birth, and every time I saw her, I begged her. Their protocol is you can't be over 100 kilos or you're not allowed a water birth. Having the hypertension, having been on fertility drugs, having been through everything we went through, I was sitting at like 99 kilos. And obviously with all the swelling, like my face, I had so much extra fluid in my body. My feet were just disgusting. So I was really heavy. And they were saying, no, you can't have a water birth, you're too fat. So we just...
What's the reasoning behind it?
So they can't get you out of the pool if there's an emergency if you weigh over 100 kilos, is their reasoning. And like I said to them all along, that man right there will lift me out of a pool if I weigh 300 kilos and there's an emergency. There's nothing that's going to stop him rescuing me. He doesn't even need you to help him get me out of the pool. He will pick me up. I'll be fine. But that wasn't enough for them. So,
it's just protocols. They've just got rules, cut-offs, and that's how it is. They just don't question. And as you said, your weight, regardless of the number, they didn't take into account all the fluid you had, which wasn't to do with actual, fat or anything. It was just fluid, and it was caused by your hypertension. Nothing you could do about it, and yet that's not even taken into consideration. That's
And the big bug there was throughout the entire pregnancy, I hadn't let them weigh me. I had declined to be weighed because BMI doesn't define me, and it has no relevance. It's an inaccurate and outdated way of looking at a person. So I declined to be weighed. So that they were like, oh, well, we don't know how much you weigh, so we can't do it. And
actually talking about BMI is actually a measure at like a global scale. It's actually not meant to be on an individual person scale. It's actually meant to be more on a like population scale, where you look at, for example, the average population in Australia's BMI is this, and therefore that means people are more or less healthy, let's say. But it's actually not meant to be looking at an individual person. It's more for a bigger scale, and I think it's now used in the hospital in terms of cutoffs. To some hospitals will not accept you if you're over a certain BMI, but I don't understand why, because it's not meant to be looking at a person. It's meant to be for a bigger scale. So that just blows me away, really.
It was ridiculous, and they kept saying to me, why don't you want to be weighed? And I said, well, I was an anorexic teenager. I have had body issues. I don't want to get on the scales so that you can tell me that I'm too fat. I'm not interested. I'm still healthy enough. I can go for a walk. It's fine. Don't worry about it. But yeah, so that was kind of we were at loggerheads about that. But anyway, so because of everything looking the way it was, they had said that they would induce me at 37 weeks. We tried our hardest to get further, but my body just couldn't do it. We went in to talk to them on the Monday. The induction was booked for the Wednesday, and on the Monday they said, look, staffing's a bit iffy, could we do it next week? And Mitch and I said to them, no, it has to be now, because we were mentally prepared. We were in a position where we felt finally like we were comfortable enough, and so we just said, no, it's got to be Wednesday. So off we went home, had our last couple of nights together, and then come Wednesday we went in for 1 o'clock, and then I had my first VE with Karen, and she said, look, you've done amazingly, your cervix is nice and soft, and it's actually at 1 centimetre, so we're good to go. We're going to put the cervical tape in. So I had the cervical put in, and then we were to wait the 12 hours and see what happened. So we were admitted, we just spent the afternoon relaxing. I had listened to everyone's advice on the podcasts, and we just tried to sleep and chill out and relax as much as possible.
Good.
And eat as much as possible. We took so many snacks into the hospital.
Nice.
And then at 8 o'clock I had a sleeping tablet. Again, all the advice on all the podcasts is to try and get some sleep. And then by 10 o'clock I started having contractions. And I wasn't able to relax after that. So I basically just started, on the ball, bit of massage, a shower, things like that. Come 3 o'clock in the morning, my body decided that its entire contents needed to be emptied. So after that, we buzzed the midwife that was on for nights, and she said, look, it would be good to do an examination and find out where you're at, and then we can decide whether we leave the cervical in or take it out. So we kind of reluctantly consented to that. I was comfortable with her, with Kylie. She was the other midwife we had. She was really, really great, on the same page as us, from New Zealand. So she was actually a home birth midwife in New Zealand before she came to Queensland.
Amazing.
So then, she said, look, you're at 4 centimetres. We'll leave it in, but I'm going to go and update the obstetrician, because we'll break your waters at 6:30. And I said, do we have to break my waters if I'm doing so well? Do we have to do this? Yep, we need to do that. So then come 6 o'clock, we transferred down to the birth suite, and just, it all just happened from there. The obstetrician came in and I said, oh, look, I really need to do a week. Can I go and do that first? And she said, yep, and just pop your knickers off and then we'll get going. And that point for me was, I just lost it at that point. It was terrifying. It was too much for me hearing those words. So we went into the bathroom and spent a bit of time in there together. And I was like, okay, I can do this, I'm ready. So I got up on the bed, got all ready. She was really good in the respect that she didn't make me put my feet in the stirrups or anything like that, because I had said, I just can't do that. It's too much for me. And so she did an examination, and she said, yep, okay, I'll get all my stuff ready. And then she came back again, and the examination was uncomfortable. And then she said, I'm just going to do a stretch and sweep. And she did it. And I have never been in so much pain in my life. I was...
Okay, there's no consent there. If you say, I'm going to do a stretch and sweep, that's not consent. Let's just say that. And consent is everything.
No discussion.
No.
No discussion and no consent. And I had said in my birth plan, and prior to all of this, absolutely under no uncertain terms do I want a stretch and sweep, an episiotomy, or an instrumental delivery. So, yeah, she said, I'm just going to do a stretch and sweep. Bam, started doing it. And, yeah, I was screaming, and Mitch was just holding on to me. And she didn't stop. She did the stretch and sweep, and then she got the hook and broke my waters. So in hindsight, we found out that it's because there wasn't a lot of forewaters, and it was quite difficult for her to break the waters. So she did the stretch and sweep to try and get more of the forewaters there. But anyway, so she said once she'd done that, she said,
yeah, there was just no communication, because she could have told you that. And exactly. And the thing with consent is she presents the information being there's not enough forewaters. For me to break your waters, I need to, or, it would be better if I did this. Do you consent to this procedure? Yes or no? And then you can make an informed decision. Informed being you've been informed of the situation. She potentially discusses pros and cons. She tells you what happens if she doesn't do it. You can ask questions, and that's how it should be. In this scenario, there's no communication, and she just does it, and that's wrong. And I'm so sorry to hear that, because you've been through so much. You've been through trauma. You're not even. I'm not even sure if at any point you've been offered any form of mental health assistance to help you through the trauma you've lived. And then it just continues. And that is just, that's just insane, really. And that is so sad to hear, that there are doctors and other professionals out there that do not respect women's consent, do not ask for consent, and just feel like they're entitled, because of their training, to just perform whatever they feel is best for your body. That is wrong. That is so wrong. Sorry, I just had to say that.
So, oh no, it's I mean, we're not dealing with that now. I can't get past that. The more time goes past, the more I reflect. And at the time, I thanked her, and I was like, oh look, I'm sorry, I'm so upset. It's just a bit much for me, but thank you so much. And in hindsight, I don't want to thank you. I wanted to kick you with my foot. I just so yeah, it's that was a lot. And they said, you'll get a bit of a reprieve now. And we basically got off the bed and we went back into the bathroom together, and I said, shut the door, and he just held on to me for a little while. And then probably within 10 minutes, the contractions were violent. It happened so quickly after that. I laboured in the bathroom, in the shower, and I kept saying, can I have my water birth? Can I have my water birth? And then they decided that they were, in fact, going to do the water birth for me, because Karen came on shift.
Okay.
And she started filling up the pool for us. And I just wanted to stand up. And I spent the majority of my labour, which was only 2 hours, I was sitting on the toilet backwards, and I was standing up. And then they just got the pool filled up in time. I had continuous monitoring the whole time as well, which was just horrific. And because of the way that I was labouring, it kept coming off. And then I heard the doctor say, oh, we're going to have to put the clip on, as in put a clip on her head. And at that point, Mitch and I both said at the same time, oh, well, you can off. And that was it. There was no further discussion about it. Because I had said she wanted to put the clip on in the beginning, and we had said, no, absolutely not. You're not drilling into my baby's head. And yeah, I heard her in the background say, oh, we're going to have to put the clip on. And we were both like, not happening. And so then Karen came on and she put like a tubey grip. You know, when you break your arm and they put the tubey grip on before the cast?
Yeah.
She put that around my tummy, and that held the monitor on enough to silence everybody.
Amazing.
And
Good.
Lottie was fine. Her heartbeat was fine. She was happy. And then, we
Good.
transferred over to the pool. I said, like, it's now. Like, the purple line was coming up my back. It was happening. And so we just got in the pool in time. And then I said to him, like, you have to get in with me. And he just got in. And then I think it was, I didn't push, sorry. I felt her. And I really wanted the fetal ejection reflex. And I just let my body do that. And then Karen said, all right, you need to go. You've got to do it. You need to do it right now. And I said, like, I've got nothing left. Like, I can't do that. She was already crowning. And, yeah, she said, no. Like, she looked at Mitch and she said, you've got to make her do it right now. And so I gave it all my might and she came out OP. So she was the wrong way around. And he caught her and she was just looking up at him. And then the cord broke. So I said to them, I felt it, and I said, look, the cord's broken. So they sort of all rushed and panicked and clipped that off. And then I was given a shot of Synto in my arm straight away. And I had said I didn't want Synto. They just did that. And, yeah, we basically just had that little bit of skin to skin. She crawled down to start feeding. And then we hopped out of the pool and I wanted a physiological stage 4 and I was told, no, we just need to get on with it. So up on the bed I went and they pulled the umbilical cord and I delivered the placenta. And then they gave me, Dad gave me back Lottie and we just sat and kind of, had a bit of time together. So it all happened really, really quickly. I was in active labour for, I think probably from 3 o'clock the night before, but then really active from 6, and she was born at 8:57. So they broke my waters at 6:30 and she was born at 8:57. And so she was born OP, and she was 5 pound 6 when she was born. So we should have been transferred, but her APGARs were 9 and 9, so she was just perfect. And then because of the labetalol, she had to have 4 hourly heel pricks to check her blood sugars. So we went through that, which was pretty awful, and as soon as we were able to get out of the hospital, we did. So we left 2 days later, and when we went back, she hadn't lost any weight. She'd actually put on weight. And then,
amazing.
Yeah, we haven't been back since. So we have a little bit of feeding difficulties. She's got laryngomalacia, which I understand is pretty common for smaller babies and early babies. But she's putting on weight
and so
every
that's
week. I weigh her at home.
Yeah, and so that's where the larynx, where she's got the voice box, is a bit softer, and it's a bit softer, and it can collapse during feeding. Is that right?
Yeah, so she squeaks, and they they cough up a little bit and spill a lot of milk. So we've adapted pretty well to that. I put a towel underneath, and as long as she can spill the milk out the side, she's a lot better.
We were chatting before we recorded this podcast. We chatted a lot about consent, because that was a big thing in your birth story, the non-respect of your consent, being coerced into procedures, not being told anything about it and just going, yeah, I'm going to do this. And I don't know if you saw the email I sent you about the different options. So I tried to do a little bit of research, because obviously what you've been through is not normal, and you have a right to say something about it. And it doesn't matter how far along, how far ago that was. There's no timeline. There's no, I didn't do it at birth, I can't now. No, that's not a thing. And I can't even understand how all of that happened to you. It's extremely wrong, and I'm just sitting here and I'm feeling really angry for you because of the way you've been treated, and because of the way that doctors have felt like they're your body, they know better than you, and they can just do whatever they want. So when I was doing a bit of research, it's actually quite hard to find what can be done about it. But the things I found is, obviously you can report it to the team leader or team manager at the maternity ward, which obviously is really difficult to do. So the other two options you've got is you can send an email directly to the Queensland Health group. So I'm not sure what kind of group would fall in. I know, so I'm in Brisbane and I fall under Metro South, but I'm not sure you'd be able to find it on the website, I think. So you can email, basically, it's a general email, but they supposedly direct it to the right service, and then they should respond to you. And the good thing with that is, once you've done it and it's an email, so you've got a trace of it, what you can do is, if you don't get a response, or they kind of respond not appropriately, like they just don't acknowledge that they've done anything wrong, or they kind of go, oh, look, that's the way it was, there's another thing you can do. You can email the health ombudsman, and so they are not linked to Queensland Health at all. They are a separate organisation which actually deals with medical complaints, whether that's a doctor, an OB, a surgeon, I think osteopath, a physio, a chiro. They deal with all of that, and so they will receive complaints and they will actually investigate. And if you have proof, so being, trace of emails or email back and forth showing that they're just not responding, or they're not responding appropriately, then that would make a really good case for the health ombudsman to go, look, this is what happened. I reported it. This is the response I've got. Do something about it, because this is not acceptable. And I am saying something about it now. What about the other women that have not been speaking up? Because it's really hard to speak up. It is really, really hard. And I'm sure you're not the only one, but you might be the only one that actually wants to do something about it. And this is so brave of you, because this is incredibly hard to speak up and say, something is wrong, something has been done to me, it shouldn't have happened. And honestly, I am feeling so angry for you, because this shouldn't have happened, and it has. And I'm sure you're not the only one, but you are brave enough to actually speak up and report it, because it shouldn't happen again.
Yeah, and we just feel so sick that this is what's happened. And the whole problem throughout this journey with this pregnancy was, every time we went to the hospital and we had to explain ourselves as to why we wanted things the way we wanted, and I had to justify why I wanted things to be a certain way, and that meant retelling that story of what happened with our previous miscarriages, and the trauma of the violence that we had encountered. And it was exhausting to have to repeat myself all the time. So
Of course.
to have to do that and to not be heard, and then for it to turn out the way it turned out in the end. I mean, we got our water birth, he delivered her, he protected me so well, But even in the heat of the moment, there was things that got missed and got, it was all so fast. And we can't ever get a do-over. And then the terrifying part for us is we want to have another child if we can, but automatically we're going to be lumped into the high-risk category. And potentially have to do it all over again. Certainly it'll be a lot different second time round. I'm a lot stronger now, and now that I've been through it, I know what I will and will not put up with, and he knows during the heat of the moment what he needs to do. Definitely next time we will have a doula in the room with us, because she can advocate for us while we're busy getting down to business. We did have a doula engaged, but we actually ended up cancelling her because we thought we were going to the hospital 4 hours away. So
that's right.
Yeah, we definitely will do things differently. But if I can just get that one thing across, that you are in control and you should be in control. And if you're not made to feel like you are, and you're not respected enough to put you in control, then go somewhere else, find somewhere else, walk away. Because they hate it when you walk away, because their statistics get really messed up. If they've looked after you throughout your pregnancy and then you suddenly don't birth with them, it ruins their statistics and they get really upset. So they will do anything they can do to make you stick in the system. And that's another thing actually about the statistics. I got my discharge summary, and upon reading it, there was information on my discharge summary that was different to what actually happened. So from a statistical point of view, the numbers were skewed. So it was noted that I did not have continuous monitoring. I did. I said I didn't want it, but I had the CTG on the whole time. And then on my discharge report and on my, I forget the name of the form that they fill out, but it said that I didn't have continuous monitoring. So there's a few questions.
See, that's proof.
Answered. Yeah.
Wow, that is a proof that there's obviously something wrong, and they are. You're right. They're probably filling out those discharge summaries to suit the reporting, the statistics, and that is proof for the health ombudsman that something is not right. Because if they say, "Oh no, she didn't have continuous monitoring," and you go and say, "Yes, I did, and it was on me. I know I had it," and obviously Mitch can obviously say the same thing. There's something not right. What is that hospital doing to suit, like, lying in those discharge summary is an offence. It should be, those summaries should be telling what actually happened, regardless of how it affects the statistics. That's not right to lie on those summaries, because they can be used in court. If it ever came to a court case, those would become a legal proof of what happened. And if they've been basically made to be convenient for the hospital, there's obviously a problem there. That is not good. That shouldn't be that way. Wow.
Yeah, and we had discussions with the obstetrician about, no, we don't want contraception, we're fine, don't worry about it. And then when I got all my summaries, it's noted that I need to go and get contraception at 6 weeks with a doctor. And that just proved to me.
And they're covering the bases.
We don't need it. Anyone who needs fertility treatment doesn't want a prescription for the pill, trust me.
Exactly right. And even if you didn't need fertility, you could say, I don't want contraception for any reasons, whether you want to have another child soon, or you just don't want hormones, or, you have other types of contraception that, work better. Whatever the reason is, if you don't want it, you don't want it. That is it.
Yeah. Just hear me. That's all I wanted.
Wow.
So, yeah. But I guess you get wrapped up in the bubble of she's perfect, and we're really just so in love with her. And it's easy to kind of focus on that and put all of this aside. But I really wanted to not let this happen. So I will definitely go down the road of emailing through my concerns. I think I'll skip the hospital directly. I'll just email through above that and then see what happens. And if nothing happens, at least I've tried. And if something happens, then the next women ahead of me will hopefully have a better experience.
Yeah, the medical professional that don't respect women's and men's right as well, obviously, they just shouldn't be practicing. If you can't respect other people's wishes, you can't ask for informed consent, you shouldn't be a doctor. Because that's the first thing you're taught when you go to med school or you do your training. That's the first thing you're taught. Informed consent is everything. You do not perform anything. You do not touch people unless they've explicitly said, yes, you can. That's how it is, yeah. Even as an exercise physiologist myself, I have to respect informed consent. I cannot touch people, let's say because they've got a sore shoulder, for example. I cannot palpate around the shoulder without asking for their consent. That makes sense to me. I wouldn't touch someone's shoulder because they said it was sore if I didn't ask. That wouldn't cross my mind. It's personal space. I respect personal space. That's how it is.
100%. And I keep coming back to the fact you wouldn't do that to me in Woolworths because it would be sexual assault. So why can you do it to me because you have your scrubs on and you're in a hospital?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. Wow. Are you doing some sort of birth debrief, or are you getting some mental health help with all of this trauma?
Not yet. I think that this opportunity is a good debrief for me, and just putting into place doing something about it. So doing that email, lodging my complaint, that will probably be enough for me. If I can just make a difference for one person, that will be enough for me. And then moving forward, when we get pregnant again, fingers crossed, that will be the chance to really heal from it. We will go down the private midwife and home birth route, and hopefully have a lot more success with that.
Amazing. Wow. And what's also really shocking in your story is, and I have done another episode where there was the same problem, it's living rural is a problem in terms of access to trained professionals, so being private midwife, or in your case there's only one hospital and it sounds like it's a pretty small hospital, so they don't have a lot of staff. So if you've got a problem with one doctor there, you're pretty much guaranteed to see him all the time. There's no other option. And that just comes with being rural, and the shortage of private midwives in Australia is absolutely insane because of how difficult it is for midwives to be endorsed and get insurance to then work as a private midwife. It is just so sad, and therefore that means that people like you who want to have a home birth may not be able to find a private midwife in your area. That's just really sad.
It is really sad, and I'm really lucky that Michelle was going to travel, and I hope to still have access to her when we get pregnant again. But failing that, I'm not sure what we would do. It's very sad.
Yeah, you'd have to hope that maybe another private midwife might have moved or services your area somehow by then, hopefully, maybe. Who knows?
If anyone's listening and they want to move up here, it's a beautiful area, nice and sunny. Please come along.
What's the time frame? When would you like them to move? Is it for next year? Well, obviously it is.
Yeah, I think
minimum next year.
Yeah, we'll probably try again sort of later next year. So just put that in your
Nice.
calendar, pop on up.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Amazing. Oh, look, Chantelle, I think we'll finish it up here. Thank you so much for telling your story. It's a really powerful story. It's going to help a lot of women out there, and I'm so glad that you decided to come on my podcast to tell your story. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's it's been really amazing, and I will definitely keep you in the loop with things. I really appreciate the help.
Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want to get notified of when a new episode comes out, please subscribe to this show on your podcast listening platform. Also, I would really appreciate it if you could leave me a review on Apple Podcast or share this episode so that other moms can find it. If you would like to tell your own pregnancy, birth, or parenting story, please head to the show notes and you will find a form there to get in touch with me. Again, thank you so much for listening, and I will be with you again next week for a new episode.